I lost my pets and almost burned the house down. A Datura trip report by Lucky, post.EARBUDS.org, June 15th, 2008. I'm in my mid-30s and have tried many different things in my time. LSD, mescaline, mushrooms, etc. I'd call myself experienced with hallucinogenics, which were always fun for me, especially when I was younger. This experience was not one of those times. I must mention that I was trying to make a very light dose to just see what the effects would be. I did not intend to become incapacitated. Although I tried to document my experience exactly, I soon realised this was an impossibility. Here is what I do know. At 11 AM, I boiled exactly 10 leaves, about 6 to 8 inches long, in 8 cups of water for 10 minutes. This was the first time with this plant, and I didn't want to overdo it. I took it off the burner and let it steep for a few minutes. As that was cooling, I made a pitcher of really sweet tea from concentrated dry tea mix. Then I filled a 20-ounce glass with ice and filled the cup halfway with tea. I then filled the rest of the glass with the leaf brew, and ended up using only about 6 to 8 ounces of the brew in total. At 11:30 AM, I drank the tea all at once. It tasted quite nasty, even though it was heavily sweetened. It only took me a few minutes. I then removed the leaves from the pot, threw them away, and the pot with the remaining brew back on the stove. At 11:45 AM, I started to wonder if I'd had enough, and thought it was a good idea to make another glass. So I did, exactly as before, and drank it quickly as well. This time I noticed it was a little hard to get down though, almost like my throat was closing up, making me feel like I was choking. I started to walk back to the couch and realised I felt funny, like my body was drunk but my mind perfectly coherent. From this point on, I cannot tell you the exact timing of anything else because, although I didn't realise it yet, I lost track of all time and reality. At 12ish, maybe, I realise I'm totally wasted. I'm sitting on the couch and notice things are really strange. Corners of the wall turning into spider webs. Very blurry vision. I was watching TV but realised I can't really see it anymore or understand what they're saying at all. I forget to mention that I was alone, for now, as my wife and daughter were due back late that afternoon. More on that later. Never intended to be this messed up, so I decided to get up off the couch and go to the bathroom. I realised then that it would take every effort, almost Herculean strength, just to get off the couch. Finally, I got up off the couch and stumbled to the bathroom, catching a glimpse of myself in the mirror. Oh my god. The first thing I noticed was that my eyes were completely dilated. I then looked down at my hands and have a hard time focusing, but when I finally did, I realised they were beet red. I mean, red. Redder than red. Worse than the worst sunburn you have ever seen. I looked back up at my face in the mirror and I finally came into focus again and realised my face looked exactly the same. Now I'm freaking out. My whole body was red from head to toe. I need to mention at this point that I still felt like I was still there mentally. All I noticed were these physical problems emerging. Completely dilated pupils, inability to focus, and beet red skin. I decided that I'd better try to puke up whatever I could, so I tried to, and only a little came up, more like an acid reflux type thing. Except now I have a bigger problem. My throat is actually closing up. Breathing was difficult and I had dry mouth like never before in my life. No amount of water would satisfy it, and every time I tried to drink, it felt like I was going to choke. I must mention that although I thought at the time my mind was still rational, I realised later that I was far from rational. Even still, I calmly, even though I felt like I was dying, went to my computer to look up websites to try to find out if there was a way to reverse the effects I was going through. Somehow I made it to a site, I think, but then realised I couldn't even read it. Every word on the page was gibberish, it didn't make any sense. I knew the answer was somewhere, but I couldn't find it. Looking back, I estimate I spent hours on the computer staring blindly at the screen. At the time, I actually thought it was just minutes though. I went outside to smoke a cig, and realised I couldn't even see anything outside, it was way too bright. so I came back in quickly enough. I then thought of how messed up I was and that I need to warn my daughter of the danger of this drug. She's 12. I went into her room and started to lecture her about the danger of drugs and to never try it and pick good friends and so on and so forth. I remember thinking how good she is being. She sat quietly and listened to me intently. When I thought I made my point, I got up to leave and realised she'd left the room. I was pissed. How could you just walk away like that? I went out into the living room to complain and realised she wasn't there. Nobody was there. I was still alone. I remember feeling at that point like I'm in some serious trouble. What on earth have I been doing? I must note that I still had all of the symptoms I had earlier. The most troubling being I stumbled everywhere I went and that my body was beet red still, and I choked every time I tried to drink something. I wondered how long it had been. I don't remember exactly what time it was when I looked, but I did realise it was a lot longer than I thought. I recall thinking my family would be home soon, and realised later that I lost several hours doing what I do not know, and all of a sudden, they'd come home. All of a sudden, they were there. My wife, and boy oh boy, did she look pissed. After what happened earlier though, I didn't believe it was actually her. This part of the story is now her recollection of what she came home to. She is a paramedic, by the way, as well. She said she came home, opened the front door, and smoke came pouring out of the house. She ran to notice that the stove was on fire. There I was, just standing there, looking off into space. She was screaming at me, "What the hell is wrong with you?" I remember saying, "Well, nothing's wrong." But she says I was mumbling something about she needed to get off my back and just go to bed. I then see my daughter run by and thought, what is actually wrong with her? I didn't realise it at the time, but what was actually wrong with her was that she was scared shitless about what was going on. Then, they just left. Or had they even been there, I wondered. Oh well, I think I'll go have a smoke. Anyway, what seemed like a few minutes, actually hours later, they came back. We have pets, by the way, too. 3 dogs and a cat. And when they came home the second time, all the animals were gone and the door was wide open. Now she's really pissed. She screams to me about almost burning the house down, and now all the pets were gone. I told her she was nuts and to get off my back immediately. Then they both left again. Damn, I thought. Were they even there? I spent the rest of the night on the computer, mostly just staring at the monitor. I woke up the next morning on the couch and had a talk with my wife. I still felt funny, but the worst was over. So anyway, this is what really happened. My wife and daughter came home at about 5:30 p.m. to find the stove on fire. She puts out the fire, and I must have taken the leaves out of the garbage and tried to make more tea to cause this. The stove was scorched. I think I drank more tea, but I cannot be certain about this. She drilled me about what was going on, saying I wouldn't tell her and kept telling her everything is just cool. She asked me repeatedly what I was on, but I would not tell her. She didn't realise I was as bad off as I was. She was more mad than anything, so she and my daughter took off and came back at about 8:30 p.m. She found me on the computer and screamed this time, saying I'd lost the pet. Well, I could go on and on with more details, but I don't want to miss the point. I could have actually burned to death in this house. I could have choked to death, heart attack, heart was actually racing out of its chest. I could have easily died in so many scenarios. Those things didn't happen, but I will tell you what did. It's been 2 months since this happened, and I'm actually still not quite the same. I hate to say it's permanent, but, well, I hope not. But the truth is, I have actually screwed myself up in some capacity. My throat is partially closed, and I have trouble breathing when I sleep. I cough up liquids sometimes because it tries to go down my windpipe. And to be honest, I actually do still see stuff that is not there at all. But worst of all is my brain. I cannot maintain my thoughts. I'm a writer, but I cannot focus anymore. It genuinely took me forever to write this up.